Savannah Rush, welcome to the show. Nice to meet you.
Great to be here, Nick. Thank you.
So you recently joined Funded Ventures, and I talked to Brian Wolf a few months ago on the show. So tell me about joining Funded Ventures and what you're up to there.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think my story starts a ways back from when I eventually joined Brian at Funded. I'll start way back at the beginning because I think that kind of encapsulates the whole journey and does a pretty good job of getting me to where I am present day. But I grew up in the Ozarks in Springfield, Missouri. My grandfather had started a roofing company back 40 or 50 years ago now. That company is still in my family today. Two of my uncles run that company now. So I grew up around small business, but never really thought that would be something that I myself would ever do professionally. It was just kind of something that my two crazy uncles did, and it seemed like a cool job, but not necessarily for me. So I did undergrad at WashU, majored in engineering, and then from there immediately went into consulting at McKinsey. So I was at McKinsey for a number of years, doing all sorts of industries, touched a lot of things and learned a lot, but also didn't see a career for myself at a consulting firm long term. So went to business school at HBS, and it was at HBS where I saw a lot of people, a lot of friends and peers doing these things called search funds. I will admit I originally thought they were crazy, that these young people that I was sitting next to in class would immediately go and run a decently sized company right after school. But the more I learned about it, the more people I spoke to and the more kind of success stories that I could see for myself, I was kind of sold on kind of the model of ETA or search. And so after business school, I had to go back to McKinsey to pay off my school. And during those 2 years, started to think very seriously, okay, when my school is paid off, what am I going to do professionally next? And how can this somehow involve small business in some shape or form? So when I was getting ready to leave McKinsey, I had known Brian in kind of this STL search ETA community. He was very involved with that and was super helpful for me in figuring out, is this really what I want to do? How can I make it work for myself? And the more that he and I got to talking, I think I originally was thinking that maybe I would have Brian sponsor my search. And then the more and more that we were speaking and figuring out how that would work, I think he has some very high ambitions, as do I. And we thought maybe if we put our heads together, we could do something even bigger than just kind of a small hybrid search model. So he had some assets that had either closed or were about to close. So I decided to join him at the funded level and start to build out the platforms that he had already closed on, and then looking ahead to building out a couple of others. So that kind of brings us to where we are now, where we have electrical, HVAC, wealth management, and then are standing up legal services, and hopefully one more platform here in the next couple of months.
Yeah, so I definitely want to get into that a little bit more, but just a couple things from your impressive background that you described. So one that stood out is you went from engineering into the consulting world. Help me connect those dots.
Yeah, I get that a lot. So at WashU, I majored in systems and electrical engineering. I did, after my sophomore year at WashU, I always thought I would be an engineer. That was like my plan from when I was in high school. And I did my first real internship in the field. I was at a L'Oreal plant in North Little Rock, Arkansas. And I thought, going into it, I thought, this is going to be perfect for me. This is like the coolest products I could possibly be working on. I was in a big manufacturing plant, literally making makeup. I did that summer, and I was like, oh my goodness, I cannot imagine my life in just perpetually in these plants trying to eke out one more sliver of productivity out of a machine. And during that summer, I was like, all right, I've got to really rethink what my career is going to be because I don't think this is what I'm meant to do for the rest of my life. So a lot of my friends were in the business school and they were talking about these case interviews and I had no idea what that was. And the more I was just talking about, the upcoming internship season with them, I started to learn more about consulting and very quickly was like, okay, this could actually be a really good path for someone that is kind of lost with what they want to do. So when I got back to campus my junior year of college, I decided I was going to recruit for consulting internships and thankfully got an internship at McKinsey. So I knew that I would learn a lot and be able to translate the skills that I got there to really whatever I wanted to do long term. So it was a perfect fit for me, and I'm very thankful I had the opportunity.
Did you enjoy the work?
Yes and no. I think I obviously I learned a ton, and that was where I think I really learned how to problem solve, how to communicate, how to implement change at large organizations. But I think what I didn't enjoy as much that certainly led me more to the small business route was the chains and chains of decision making, of influencing in these giant organizations can be super challenging. And I just found that actually getting things done was much, much harder than I ever would have expected from the outside.
Yeah, I'm curious, why do you think it is so hard to get decisions done as these organizations get larger?
Yeah, it's a great question, and if someone has the answer, I would love to know. I think in my experience, I think the layering of organizations can present a lot of challenges, and they're often kind of redundant layers. This is such a typical kind of consulting response of the spans and layers and kind of the processes and systems that are in place are not always designed with a ton of intentionality, especially about speed of decision making. It may result in the absolute best and highest decision, but I think oftentimes, you're sacrificing a ton of time in the process, and I don't know that that's always the right choice of I often think, like, a good decision today is better than a great decision 6 months from now, and I think that sort of thing happens a whole lot just based on the number of people and the intentionality of the systems that are designed in those sorts of organizations.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about was during your time at Harvard in the MBA program, how popular was the conversation around ETA and search funds there?
It was super, super popular. So I graduated HBS in 2023, and the ETA crowd, I would call it, was some of the hottest jobs, the hottest, next step after graduation. I wouldn't say I have like any hard numbers on what that was for my class, but I know so many peers and friends that took the path. I will say not everyone found an asset in their kind of 2 years of searching. There were a number of folks that I know that, their clock kind of ran out, but I also know many, many that have had tremendous success, even in the last couple of years since we graduated. So I would say it was definitely a topic of conversation. Every section had at least a couple people who went and did that after graduation, and the ETA class with Rick and Royce was so popular that I didn't even get in. So I didn't even take the search class at HBS, which surprises a lot of people because I wasn't one of the lucky ones in the class schedule for our elective curriculum our second year.
Why do you think this ETA path is so popular with folks in these MBA programs?
I mean, I think it's obviously a tremendous opportunity from a financial lens, but I don't think that's for the vast majority of people. I don't think that's the reason why people choose it. I think a lot of people want more responsibility and want more decision making power, more ownership than what a lot of those typical corporate jobs give right out of school. So I think it's really the only path that I can think of where you can be 30 years old and running running a P&L, running a team, and having full accountability over an entire business. I just can't think of another opportunity that allows and gives you the mix of financial upside, decision making rights, and the flexibility that this path allows you.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Of course, I am at a very different later stage in my career than you, and I learned about ETA late. And I always tell folks when I give talks, my regret is not knowing about this when I was 30, because
Yeah.
it's a pretty awesome path to take. So tell me, what is your role and responsibilities as managing partner at Funded Ventures? Because I believe you're also president of one of the platform companies, correct?
Yes, that is right. I think what I'm spending a lot of my time on today will be much different if you were to ask me that same question a year from now. But I think ultimately the goal is that I will be accountable across all of our platforms and leading kind of the operations across each of them, as well as identifying what are kind of those next what is kind of the next horizon of funded and what are the growth avenues that we want to take as kind of a broader funded platform. So I think what that has translated to today is a little different in that right now I'm spending the vast majority of my time on our asset in Colombia, which is an electrical contractor. So that is our one platform today that doesn't have, I would say, a dedicated operator. Like that dedicated operator is me, and it's been just a tremendous experience so far. I mean, it's only been a little over 60 days since we closed, but I've been here 3 to 4 days a week, really getting immersed in the business and really learning what it takes to be an operator. And it's just been certainly a learning experience, but also just a ton of fun to be in the shop with our team, being able to go out on jobs with them, interacting with customers, and just all of the things that small business is about. I've just had a ton of fun so far.
So tell me that acquisition story. Why did this business not have an operator upon acquisition?
Yeah, it was kind of a roundabout way that we got to closing is we thought we we had someone that would be in the seat. And I think the thesis that we have in at Funded and that we really believe strongly in is that a lot of these smaller cities and towns are, I think, have a lot of just undervalued businesses simply based on the nature of like where they're located. And we happen to like them very much. So I think Columbia, Missouri is can be a tough sell for a family who's used to living in larger cities to up and move. And I think that proved to be a bit of a barrier for some of the folks that we had been in contact with. And me being from Springfield and living in St. Louis, it wasn't long before we figured, well, I'll just go, that'll be kind of my baby of a platform, and it probably makes most sense with where the numbers shook out for me to do that anyway. So it's actually worked out quite well, and I'm super thankful that I've had the experience to be here so frequently as well.
So then did you have to do the day one speech
I did.
announcing it to the employees? How'd that go?
I did. I think quite well, actually, better than I expected. The morning that we closed, so midway, we start every morning with a dispatch meeting that happens at 7 a.m. every day. So I had to wake up about 4 from St. Louis to get here in time. So I was a little sleepy, and I think it was maybe even still dark out when we started the meeting in the office. But the sellers of Midway kind of introduced me to, at the time it was all guys. So they introduced me to the guys and said, "Hey, this is Savannah. She is the new owner of Midway, and I think she wants to say a hello to you guys before you head out for your jobs for the day." And I had a very quick little message. It was probably just a couple minutes long, but just wanted them to know that my first priority for them every day that will never change is their safety. Electrical work, you don't often think about the dangers involved, but I certainly do, and I know they do as well. It is not without risk, and they're dealing with heavy equipment and things that have the potential to harm a person. So I said, the first thing I want you to know is that my commitment is to get you home to your family safe every day. The second is that I think they'll be surprised at how little changes for them. I certainly didn't promise that there would be no changes, but I think I was hoping that they would be pleasantly surprised that there will be limited changes, and the changes that we do make will all be in service of making their lives easier. And then finally, it was just a commitment to nothing nothing is changing as far as their employment. We want everyone to stay, and we want everyone to be kind of along for the journey with us. So that was really my critical message, just helping them feel a little bit of stability in a time that was a surprising message, I think, for everyone, but hopefully helped to just set the right tone on a Monday morning.
And you said it's been about 60 days. How have you been received now over this first couple months?
Good. I think at first there was a little bit of trepidation of, who is this girl who is admittedly not an electrician, who is trying to, tell us what to do. But I think over time, just being with them in the office, every day I'm in Columbia, I make it to that 7 a.m. meeting when they get dispatched, and just those quick conversations that I have with them, and especially going with them to check on job sites, riding along in the van, things like that, I think have just gone a super long way to just show them that I'm a person too. I like to have a beer just like they do, and I'm just a real person that they shouldn't be afraid of. I think has gone a long way, and I think outside of just our little building, the Columbia community has been just so welcoming of me. I think the fact that Midway sold was pretty big news in the community and spread quite quickly. So had people that would just show up at the office wanting to introduce themselves to the new owner. There's a big piece in the local newspaper about the transition. And then there's a really amazing community of local women, like business owners and business leaders in Columbia, that have really welcomed me into the fold very quickly. And I view that community as just tremendous mentors and people that I can lean on, who know the area well and can be there when I have a question or need some support.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think there's only one other story I've heard, and it was an acquisition in Colorado. Maybe it was Vail, where they bought the local auto repair shop. And then, the town started showing up and seeing who the new owners were and what's going on. That's a really interesting experience. Maybe it's unique to small towns. I didn't have anybody show up when we made the announcement except, ADP trying to get my payroll.
Yeah, it's been super cool. I think that is another advantage of these sorts of towns and cities of it's not necessarily bad news if a business gets acquired. I think a lot of people have been super excited to see it just kind of get transferred to the next generation and see where we can take the business.
You mentioned that some of these companies in smaller towns across the country may be undervalued for a number of reasons, but you all like them. So tell me that part of the thesis. Why do you like businesses in these smaller towns?
Yeah, I the obvious reason is that there's obviously fewer competitors trying to look at the best assets of an HVAC company in Chicago or Minneapolis or St. Louis. Those business owners are getting flooded with emails every single day from people trying to buy their business. People in Columbia, Missouri or Springfield, Missouri, or insert 100,000 population city here. Those business owners often are not. And there's a different opportunity to cut through the noise of some of those things and actually get through to potential sellers to communicate our story and how we can partner with them to see through the transition of their business. So I think we've had much better luck with places like Columbia in that respect. I think in a lot of these cities, a lot of the home services companies in particular, there's a tremendous opportunity to I hesitate to say professionalize, but I'm struggling to think of a better word fit of just there's very few businesses that are really doing home services well. And so with a little cash, a little investment, and the time and attention, I don't think it's out of the question to be the leader in home services in a very short amount of time if you're doing all of the things right of really focusing on customer experience, making it very seamless for our customers to have, an electrician come into their home, all the way from scheduling down to how they're invoiced. Is a lot of these sorts of towns do not have the level of professionalization that someone would expect in this day and age with you can schedule a haircut on your phone, you can schedule all sorts of things on your phone. Why can't you schedule an electrical visit? So I just think there's a lots of opportunity and the competition is often a little bit less intense in some of these places. And I think that what one of our goals at Funded is to also expand across trades. And so when you are kind of the go-to partner for thinking about succession in a location, you are going to be the one that gets kind of the first looks at some of the best companies. So that's kind of our goal for certainly for Midway here in town is to be that preferred succession partner across the trades. And I think it's a lot easier to do that in a town where everyone kind of knows each other and people are very accessible and ingrained in the community.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that. You're starting to touch on it, but what your approach is when you say a platform investment like Midway. So does that mean you want to? I know what you just described about expanding across the trades, but do you think about that just very locally to a place like Columbia, or would you also bring other businesses in other parts of the state or country under this platform?
Yeah, I think yes and yes. As we are still getting our footing, I think I hesitate to go too far geographically of I don't want us to get too far ahead of our skis on some of these things. So I think having a local epicenter, at least where we are now in our journey, it probably makes most sense to have things more concentrated locally. But certainly, as we grow and run our playbook for systems and processes, I see no reason why we wouldn't look at assets that are a little farther away.
If it's something that you're comfortable sharing, I'm curious kind of the next level up of that question of what is the philosophy at Funded Ventures, right? Because there's a million different models for this, right? The traditional hold for 3 years, 3 to 5 years, to the indefinite hold and just plan to dividend out forever. What is your all's investment approach?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. We are very much long-term hold focused. Is we believe in the enduring nature of these companies and want to see them through not just the most immediate horizon of growth, but hopefully shepherd them through multiple horizons of growth and really be able to see those compounding returns over time as with every investment we intend to hold them for hopefully the kind of the rest of my professional career, which knock on wood will be a lengthy amount of time.
And we've talked about home services quite a bit, obviously. Is that the core focus of Funded Ventures to stay in the home services space?
I wouldn't say core, like the only focus. It's certainly a core focus. I think those platforms are we're still in. I would say we're at like the second batter of the first inning in a baseball game. Like we are so early, and just in terms of what's kind of taken off and accelerated most quickly, I think our platforms and home services are kind of the winners right now. But I think over time, we will add a couple others. I think some of our others will really take off, and it will be a little bit more of a diversified portfolio. But right now, yeah, our electrical contractor and HVAC company up in Michigan, those two are well on their way.
Again, I know it's only been a couple of months, but I'm just curious, is there something that really stands out to you that, you had an expectation that it was gonna be like whatever, but that expectation just totally not reflective of what you discovered in reality?
For sure. I mean, I don't think my answer will be super unique, but I think going into the first couple of weeks, I had a very detailed, like 100-day plan of what needed to get done by when and all of those very consulting-esque things. And I don't want to say that's been thrown out the window, but there's been a lot more firefighting and just running the business tasks that have taken up a considerable portion of my time that wasn't necessarily what I expected going into it. Yeah, I think that's probably the way I would encapsulate it.
Yeah, you can throw those 100-day plans right out the window.
Yes,
It's
yes.
they're just not relevant after the first day, seems like. Well, that's super cool, Savannah. I mean, congratulations on getting to this point. I've known Brian for a few years at this stage and know how hard he's been working on putting this together. And it's neat to see the whole program starting to get running. That's awesome for y'all.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been when I think about where we were even 3 to 6 months ago, where we are now is a lot a lot of progress has been made and certainly more to come.
Well, good for you, and I'll definitely look forward to keeping an eye on all of your success.
I appreciate it.
Yep. Well, thanks for your time today. Pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure, Nick. Thanks so much for having us on.